Perfect.
All right. Welcome back to another great episode of Secure Down Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Denny Caballero. And today with me, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Hasard Lee, a amazing aviator. And you're not just your typical aviator, because just being a fighter pilot is awesome, but you're an accomplished pilot, combat proven aviator, influencer, entrepreneur. And I would say you're now part of a new upcoming class of veterans. We're redefining what it means to be a veteran, not being satisfied with just our service and continuing to aspire, to dream more, to reach new goals, and to shatter the myth of what it means to be a service member. We're no longer looking to just be satisfied with what we did and what we've done in the past. We're looking to continue reaching new goals and shatter new ceilings. And you're coming out with a book that I am excited to talk about. Your book, The Art of Clear Thinking, a stealth fighter pilot's timeless rules for making tough decisions. And I'm going to grill you right off the bat. Why write this book and why now?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. I completely agree with you that we have a special forces or fighter pilots. We have a really unique skill set. And so that's what I was recognizing after I came back from Afghanistan. I had a little bit of time off transitioning to the F-35. And I started to decompress, just write some of the stories that had happened in Afghanistan. It wasn't to publish a book or anything like that, just really more of a chance to just live through with, a little bit more time what happened in Afghanistan. And so I think we have a really unique training, really unique skill set, just like special forces. And it's not necessarily utilized that well afterwards. So a lot of fighter pilots, they go on to fly for the airlines. And at this point, at 400 feet, you just kick up your feet, turn on autopilot, and you are, the Airbus has a tray table that comes out. And so you're eating, filet mignon as you're cruising at 30,000 feet. So you're not using those skills that you've built and hammered over the past decade or two. And so I really appreciate it. And I think the Special Forces community has done a fantastic job of branching out. You have politicians, you have, people like Jocko Willink, a lot of Navy SEALs, a lot of people out there that have parlayed a lot of their skills that they learned in the service to a career outside of the service as well. And they're doing a good job of representing, what it means to be in the military. So I really wanted to do something similar. It would have been easy to go to the airlines, but I specifically chose not to. I wanted to be like Cortez, burn the ships and force myself to succeed on the outside. And, I don't regret doing it. Definitely very difficult, but I think that's something that is in both of our blood of wanting to do something challenging, wanting to do something difficult and risky. And so it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that our society right now, they're struggling and it's not to set ourselves aside from civilians or the rest of our brothers and sisters out there, but we are in through the course of our careers, our training, we've constantly had to evolve, to constantly push the envelope to be better, to not settle, to not get relaxed. And that breeds a different type of mentality. That breeds somebody that's constantly looking to improve, to cut out and trim the fat of every process they have so they can be more efficient, so they can be critical thinkers on the go, faster, 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 faster. Whereas a lot of our friends, a lot of our peers, if they're not involved in a great community effort or some sort of enriching program, they're not looking for that cutting edge. They're not looking to hone and sharpen that steel. They're looking for what's efficient enough to keep me within my job, to keep me in the comfort level. I think there's this myth that we've been told that it's all about consumption. It's all about trying to escape boredom. We want to always be entertained. We want to always be consuming. And individuals like us, we don't have that luxury when we're in the job. A high performance athlete, a high performance individual has to continue seeking knowledge, continue seeking growth. And it's not about trying to relax or just dull the senses and just be entertained, switching from binging and going to the next Netflix series. It's about how can I get better? How can I maximize my ability? And I think And I haven't had the pleasure of reading your book yet because it hasn't come out yet. But I think just reading the descriptions, I'm getting that vibe of like, okay, this is something that Dave, the accountant, Steve, the real estate agent, Mindy, the stay-at-home wife, can take today, read it, and start getting valuable insight on how they can go about improving their life, their way of thinking.
Yeah, I agree. So just to go to your previous point, I think that we're hunters and you want to go out and do something, you want to hunt. And I think that's why sometimes pilots, also some of my friends who are special forces operators, have a little trouble transitioning because the outside world can be pretty boring if you don't find the right thing to do. And it takes a while, especially when you're so honed in on the mission, you're so busy, focused that you don't have a chance to really see what's out there. And there is a lot of exciting things on the outside, but it takes a while to find them. And I think for people like us, it's like if you go see a zoo animal, if you see a tiger in the cage, he's not happy there. He wants to be out on the plains of Africa hunting, and maybe some sheep will be happy at the zoo, but for kind of a type A person, that's boredom. And so that's what I was finding on the outside. It's all email, posturing, trying to climb the corporate ladder, that kind of stuff. And, it kind of drives me crazy. There's some people that excel at it and really enjoy it. That's definitely not for me. That's why I kind of wanted to branch out and be an entrepreneur and do some of this content creation stuff as well. But yeah, I think we learn a very unique skill set. For at least fighter pilots, it costs about $50 million to train an F-35 pilot. We go through a lot of different training exercises, a lot with you guys out there. Mm-hmm. And I think those skill sets can really apply to everyday life. I'd say the one skill that we have as fighter pilots is to make decisions. Every time we fly, we're making thousands of decisions out there, and oftentimes lives are on the line. So you get good at making decisions. When like a civilian comes up to me who's a doctor, accountant, who wants to get better at making decisions, and they have any interest in aviation, I say, solo an aircraft. Solo an aircraft, because as soon as you take off on that first solo, you realize that you are the only person that's going to get you back on the ground. And so there's no committees, there's no simulations or models or anything like that. It's you and your brain getting your butt back onto the ground. So I think there's a lot of carryover. There's a lot of unique things that we learn that can apply to everyday life.
Absolutely. That internal work, that what you just said, solo an airplane, you're the only person that can get you back on the ground. A lot of people don't find themselves in those situations where you're all you got. There's constantly a resource to help. There's always somebody there. Well, I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to have 100% solution for this problem. I can just Google it. It bleeds into your life. It bleeds into everything. If you've constantly been told and lived a life where, hey, I don't have to really know this. I can just go off and haphazardly, no pun intended, go about my day, go about my life, go about my endeavors, and someone's going to always bail me out. I don't have to develop any real skills. I just have to have the 80% firing solution. And that doesn't work where we're from. You can't half-ass. There's a lot of things you can get lucky with, but when it comes to being a dependable professional in our career fields, you can't be that broken link. You can't be that person that's constantly looking for assistance. You have to be able to land. You have to be able to put that fire mission together. You have to be able to write that con up and get that operation order ready to go and actually execute your mission. You actually have to be a professional. And we're missing that. We're seeing our society today, our brothers and sisters are lost and they're looking for more assistance rather than, hey, how do I go about cultivating this within me? How do I go about developing these skill sets within my own self? And it's not about being harsh and being mean. It's just about being able to put content out there, being able to develop books and material that says, hey, you can do this. You can fly your own plane. You can land safely. It just takes work. It takes having discipline. I feel like it's become a vulgar word. Nobody wants to do the work. No one wants to be disciplined in what they do, because the hardest things you have to do are the deep work within yourself. And that's what I'm now starting to see.
I think it comes down to one word: accountability. So I think when we are out on a mission, same thing with you guys, the buck stops with you. So if you make a mistake, people can die. I think for the vast majority of people in the civilian world, you're working for 100,000 person companies. And so maybe the C-suite executives, the CEO has that kind of decision-making firepower. Everybody else is just kind of turning a small wheel in this giant machine. So there's not a lot of accountability. The buck doesn't stop with most people in the civilian world. And so that's what I tried to talk about in this book. I think that in a lot of ways, leadership is now transitioning to decision-making as opposed to just management. I think management really sprung up from the Industrial Revolution, where you had these big factories of thousands of people, and you really had to make sure everybody was working. But as society has progressed, the technology we have is amplifying the decisions that we're making. So for instance, as a human, the average human only burns 90 watts of electricity, and yet the average person in a first world country burns 12,000 watts of electricity that powers all the technology that amplifies those decisions. So I think we're in a period where we're transitioning from more of a management philosophy to a decision-making philosophy, because we have so much technology augmenting the decisions we're making, and it's becoming more important because there's more accountability on those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes time and I know it said your book took you, it was a work of 6 years. When it came down to writing that out, mapping that out, how was that process of being able to say, okay, what am I going to include? What is really pertinent? How did you go about structuring the book? Because I know there's a lot of technical aspects I've tried to explain to friends. I've tried to explain and be able to express what it means to be accountable as a leader, what it means to be part of a team and that discipline. But a lot of jargon just gets, and a lot of it gets lost. And it's like hard to explain to a lot of people those key things that make us successful. How did you go about writing out that formula, that outline, to know exactly, okay, what can my audience truly dissect and take away from this book?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I first started writing down some of those stories, it was just for me. It wasn't for an audience. So it was two things that started the book. That plus I gave a speech on Memorial Day. I had just come back, and unfortunately we lost a few people. And so Luke Air Force Base wanted me to speak on Memorial Day, and there's a teacher in the crowd. And she was like, my students need to hear this. They have no interaction with anybody in the military. They'd love to hear this. So I started speaking in schools. And so those two things kind of merged together, and I was able to decide I want to write a book. In order to write a book, you really have to grow an audience. So all the social media stuff was really born out of the desire to write this book and to be able to connect with an audience out there. Now, I think the key to your question is storytelling. So if, it's just knowledge, I think there's somebody out there that said, if it was just knowledge, everybody would have a six-pack and be a billionaire, because you just make money, just work out. It's easy. So I think it comes down to living the experience is the best thing you can do for being able to influence your behavior. Next to that is learning from somebody else's story. Without story, there's no context. And without context, there's really not a way to internalize the lessons learned. So I think for me, it was really learning how to be a good storyteller in writing. So for me, I didn't have a big background as a writer. I think the longest thing I'd ever written before this was a 10-page paper in college. So this was like writing a 10-page paper every week for over 500 days straight. It was on Thanksgiving of the second year that my wife was like, all right, on Christmas, you're mine. You got to stop writing, because I'd be sitting in this office 4 hours every morning. It just grinding through it, because I'm not a particularly fast or skilled writer. So I had to just grind out about 500 words a day. The next day half the time I'd realized that I was going in the wrong direction. And most authors say, in order to write a book, just write a crappy first draft. They don't tell you that once you have that crappy first draft, there's a lot of work between that and a published manuscript. And so I went through 9 revisions. I wrote every word myself. So I think for me, it's developing that storytelling skill. And the way I did that was look at other authors that I admired. Malcolm Gladwell's one of them. Atul Gawande, who wrote the Checklist Manifesto, who's a surgeon and a fantastic writer. I would analyze every sentence that they had. I wish I had their book right here with me, but I would analyze every sentence they had, every paragraph they had, every chapter they had, and probably read each of their books probably 50 times, just trying to analyze how they told these interwoven stories that also had lessons learned in them. So that's what I did with the Art of Clear Thinking. It's 80% storytelling, 20% lessons learned. I try to make it exciting. Some stories from my time flying, some stories from key moments in history, like Eisenhower's decision to delay D-Day by a day, and then to execute the largest amphibious landing, even though there's a really narrow window in the weather. And then also some business decisions. So I talk about how Excite.com, if you can remember that, it was like a Yahoo kind of portal back in the 90s. They failed to buy Google for $750,000. Yeah. So I talk through that decision-making process and some of the lessons that people can learn from it.
That makes sense. That's absolutely something that really, really grabs me. Like I already you got my mind racing right now, because that's exactly the format that I would think would truly resonate with an audience. It's really hard to wrap everything around how to fly the F-35 or how to be successful in your military career and interweave lessons that somebody can take out into their career field. But when you do it through story and you do it through relevant things that have happened throughout history and personal stories, that's the whole package right there. That's gold.
And that's how we've been doing it for thousands of years. There wasn't Instagram back in the caveman days. They would just tell stories and they would pass those stories along. So I think it's a rich heritage, going back to 10,000 years, probably more, probably 30,000 years of storytelling. And that's how we as humans learn. Yeah. And I think that's our strength. Our superpower is being able to learn quickly. So I think over the evolution, I did some, doing research for the book. The one thing humans are notable for is decrease in strength over the millennia and the increase in our brains. So our brains are 7 times bigger than a similarly sized mammal. Even for a primate, our brains are 3 times bigger. So our superpower is learning, and particularly learning from others. We don't always have to, my toddler might be different, but we don't always have to touch a hot stove to learn that it's hot. Sometimes we can learn from somebody else touching the stove.
Obviously, you've never met an 18 Bravo. Special Forces weapons sergeant will always touch that burner to make sure it's hot.
Well, as an instructor pilot, I see a lot of students that want to touch that hot stove too. And I'm like, please just learn from other people's mistakes. So that's the key. And, and a lot of times we get it wrong, but sometimes we get it right. And that's, I think, what really separates us from the monkeys and the other animals out there.
Absolutely. That the power of sharing through story is amazing. But I think it gets us, as the human race, it does get us in trouble, because now everything is all about capturing your attention, but then giving you something completely worthless to consume. There's how many reality TV shows out there right now? And they all do a great job of capturing your attention. MILF Island. Like, instantly you're connected and you're bought in, but it's worthless junk. And people consume it on a daily basis. Which is the beautiful thing about having somebody that flies one of the fastest, most advanced jets ever created come out with a book that has substance to it. Because I can't tell you how many young adults or individuals are going to see that and be like, holy shit, an F-35 pilot? Oh yeah, I want to read that book. It's got the flash and it's got the substance that we need to put out there and support and highlight that's just my take on it. I can just see it right now. Like, people are going to flock to it because it does have that flash. It does have that immediately got you and grab you in. But the other great thing about you, Hasard, is that you're also an influencer. And that's a word that's become another swear word, another
weird, I'd say a content creator, but you know, this is your show,
creator,
whatever you think.
Even then you're like, wait a second, don't label me that. No, but it's still, it's one of those words and a new thing that we're getting adjusted to, but it's not content that is worthless or not engaging. And how did you navigate that? Because there's people out there that game the system. There's people like Mr. Beast who know exactly how to craft the perfect intro to hook an audience. And the content can be whatever it is, but the fact that you've gone through the trouble to figure out and hack the human brain of a child or a teenager or an adult just to get you in, to suck you in, to make you, another follower, another subscriber. How do you do that, but put out great content and do responsible content creation in today's world?
Yeah, I think somebody was saying, I forget who, but if you just follow the clicks, everything's going to devolve into porn and murder. So, that flash out there, it's really easy. Just chase those clicks, and it's just a race to the bottom. So yeah, that's been my life the last couple of years. So I am a reservist, so I do fly part-time. So I've had to learn to navigate that, because when I first started, there were only 3 other part-time F-35 pilots. And so, learning how to stay current in the F-35, also growing my podcast, as well as a social media following, so I could write this book was challenging, because I think my first instinct was you want to make everything credible, because that's what we deal with when we're flying. If it's not credible, if it's not 100% accurate, we don't want it. But what I had to learn was it needs to be about 80%, because if you're just writing white papers out there, only 200 people are going to read them. And that's some of the problem that the military has. We have a lot of great content coming out of the military, but it's all in the form of white papers and research and things like that. And nobody reads them. And what that does is it provides a vacuum for, especially in the aviation industry. So I think Special Forces, there's a lot of good, credible people out there. In the military aviation world, it's not like that. So you have a bunch of pseudo journalists that have never been in the military. And that's a big problem with these military aircraft, because half of the stuff is classified. So they might be true experts in memorizing Jane's Defense magazine. They might be a true expert in memorizing Wikipedia, but they don't have access to all that classified information. So their knowledge is really limited. And so they'll put out videos that are complete garbage. And so we didn't have a lot of credible voices out there. So what I had to learn is balancing, because I do understand all that aspect of how to get clicks and things like that. How do I interweave that with this desire to be credible? And so, it's a really difficult line to walk. Anybody who's an expert, I think it's kind of a natural thing to want everything also to be perfect and pristine. And then the general audience, that's too boring from them. So you have to find a good in between for that. And it's been a 5-year journey. I'm still learning every day, but I think we've at least semi-cracked the code of where can we make things exciting while still keeping it credible. And it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, it's incredibly advanced. I have not cracked that code. I am horrible at YouTube.
Let's talk about aliens right now. Let's talk about UFOs, and then we can title this F-35 pilot, shot down a UFO.
We have to get high. We have to talk about ancient religions, and we have to talk about aliens coming in.
And AI.
And AI.
And let's talk about some Bitcoin.
Well, I'm glad you're there, because I'm actually a hologram.
We're in a simulation.
Yeah, that's right. Everything is simulation. It's so true. I I tend to lean towards focusing on authentic engagement with real people that are wanting to do something good, and want to better themselves. I know our main focus is mental health advocacy and resource awareness and bridging that gap from the service member or veteran that's having trouble accessing care and getting them ready to understand that, like, hey, it's okay to ask for help, because nobody that goes through combat leaves that trauma or leaves that phase of their life unscathed. Everybody has something they take away. And we all need to have something, a resource, a little toolkit of what we can do to get better. We have this myth that keeps propagating that, well, these people aren't directly connected to combat, so they don't deserve the same attention. They don't have the same issues. Like, no, like, I've met tons of people that are quote unquote support or part of a unit that didn't see direct engagement with the enemy, and they still have issues. We're human beings. We are not perfect. We are flawed, and it's okay to acknowledge that. When you were going through your combat deployment, your train ups, did you ever suffer any sort of situation where, like, wait a second, I need to take a step back. I need to get some help, maybe with stress, anxiety, or any of that? Because all these things can happen on the back end of deployments. It doesn't happen just in combat. We can deal with stress and anxiety in our everyday life and need assistance.
Yeah, it was challenging. And it makes sense. Combat, most extreme environment in the world, it's so different than everyday life back home. So you're putting these young, impressionable people into this chaotic situation. So of course they're going to have, some mental health issues. For me, definitely, when I was at Bagram on Veterans Day, or the day before when we were celebrating it, we had a run planned, and there's a Taliban soldier that walked up and detonated himself and killed 4 service members and I think wounded 16. So I think that goes back to your point of these last 20 years. It's not been, the bad guys over there, the good guys over here. Like, everything's intermixed, and those support people, they're driving in convoys. The enemy's sneaking on the base. They're getting shelled with mortars. So, people who are going outside the wire probably are in a little bit more extreme situations, but everybody is experiencing something that is far different than our everyday life in the United States, at least. So, lots of different situations when, so as we were talking before, the first couple months of the deployment, standard Afghanistan, pretty benign, not a lot going on. And then Mattis took over, Secretary of Defense Mattis, in January of 2017. And after that, we were cleaning the rails, every flight, every sortie. And with the targeting pods, you get up pretty close, especially with the APKWS AGR 20s. You are, engaging a lot of people out there. And so for me, I definitely felt that extra stress. I started meditating in the middle of the deployment. So it's something that I had tried a little bit because I'd heard such good things about it, but I didn't really connect with it. But then in the middle of the deployment, I was feeling that stress, feeling that burden. And I started meditating, and I meditated for like 600 days in a row after that, because it really helped, not 100%, but maybe 10, 15%, which is still a big percentage. So that I was also on the graveyard shift. So there'd be days where I didn't even see the sun. I would show up to the squadron at like 4:30 in the afternoon with those big mountains there. It would be in the shade, and then I would get done in the morning. There'd be a little bit of sun, and then get some breakfast and go to bed. So that really kind of does something for you as well. So for me, it was at least getting a little bit of sun, waking up early so I could get a little bit of sun, going for a run, exercising. Even that, though, you could still feel the stress. And when I came home, you have a whole new set of challenges because you're just in life and death situation. People are dying. You were taking lives. And then now people are fighting about the stupidest things, the parking spots at the mall. They have no clue what's going on. They don't even care. They don't even know a war is going on, especially with these long wars like Afghanistan. Yep. So that's a whole new set of challenges of, we were just, busting our balls out there and nobody cares about it. So that took a little bit of time to get over. I don't know if I have any great techniques with that other than just to keep in contact with the friends that and brothers that you're out there with, because I think it's such a unique experience that most people aren't even going to understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Shared struggle. That's the thing that really connects us all. That's why so many of us struggle with identity. We don't take the time to recognize that we're still part of a greater brotherhood. We're still part of a greater community, and we're much more than our uniform. The camaraderie, the brotherhood we develop in combat is beyond amazing. It'll always be with us, but it's not the only thing that makes us who we are. And when I went through my crisis and having to go through that, and I'm so grateful that I did fall apart and break down and had a good amount of time to figure my stuff out before I retired, because it helped me and allowed me to see and talk to all my other friends that were already out and see that I could develop a formula, and to do that real deep internal work, the type of work that you can't afford to just let the outside world distract you from it. You can't just throw on Netflix. Like, you have to do the work. You have to be able to deal with the trauma, the issues, and realize that you're a whole different person. You might be a soft operator. You might be a great paratrooper. You might be the greatest fighter pilot out there, but you're more. You're something more, and you have more value than that. That was the key for me. And a lot of the people that I've been helping is being able to sit down and find that true identity. Like, hey, you're more than this. You have so much more to bring to the world. And one of the key things that helped me was also meditation. And I've realized that a lot of us are leaning back on these old modalities that at first, when we were younger, we probably, like, I know I did. I joked and laughed. And I was like, I'm no hippie. I don't do any. I will never need to do that. And here I am every single morning, every single day. I meditate. I teach mindfulness. I'm certified and I teach it and I believe in it because I saw the change it had in me. And when I meet individuals such as yourself, and this isn't a planted question. I had no idea this is something that Hasard used as well. But that's a huge, remarkable thing that I say, like, wow, look, there's something to this. There's something to being able to take a specific, even if it's just 13, 15 minutes aside in your daily life and just be still, focus on your breath. And do you still meditate? Do you still find it useful?
I do. It's a little tougher with kids to find a good time for that. So I don't do it every day now, but I do try to as much as possible. And I think it's a whole category of unplugging. So it's not necessarily, I think a lot of people still think of it as the hippie stuff and the gongs and things like that. And that's certainly a subset of meditation, and I'm sure it works really well. But I think there's, to our conversation earlier, people know how to grab your attention: social media, email, Slack, all these things. And so you need to find a way as a person to unplug a little bit. So I think it can be a walk. I think it can be working out, a hike. It can be, gardening, anything where you're able to really reduce the barrage of noise that's coming after you. So yeah, every day I try to find some way to quiet the noise out there, generally in the morning, and allows me to have a more focused purpose throughout the day, especially for me, email, those are just, tasks that reach out and grab you. So I try to really not look at email and to to try to win the morning, the first hour or so, come up with the few things that I need to get done that will make today successful. And then after that, that's when I let the noise in. And I think there's a lot of little techniques, not bringing your phone into your bedroom, little things like that really make a big difference. It's almost the same thing as nutrition. You don't want to bring junk food into your house. You don't want to grocery shop when you're hungry. It's the same thing with attention. It's just a currency that all these companies are using to put their hooks into you to make some money. So, and it's not a fair fight. They have teams of data scientists. They have a lot of knowledge on how to do it. That doesn't mean they have wisdom. So there's a lot of idiots running these tech companies. And, so they're trying to grab your attention, and it's almost an impossible task to fight it. But it's definitely worthwhile if you can at least brunt some of that.
Absolutely. I do want to take a moment to ask you a question about your service. What was one of the, and I know it's hard, and I get it asked myself too, but could you share with us perhaps one of your greatest moments as a fighter pilot while you were on active duty?
Yeah, that would be that spring of 2017 when ISIS was starting to rear its head in Afghanistan. We were the only fighter squadron in the country because everything was winding down. And Mattis said, "I want ISIS annihilated." And as you know, that's not Air Force lingo. So the Air Force spent 2 weeks, I'm sure, in meetings trying to figure out what that meant. But it meant we're going to drop a ton of bombs. And we're going to have people like you and Rangers going out clearing these small towns in the Nangarhar province, so along the Pakistani border. And it was high risk. They were doing a lot of dismounted stuff. And every day we'd be dropping bombs, troops in contact situation. And I mean, those guys were awesome, doing a lot of great work, putting themselves at a lot of risk. And to be able to affect those situations, to hear the stress in their voice, to be able to drop some bombs, employ some rockets, or even strafe a couple times and help them to have a little bit better day. That's by far the best highlight of my career. And even, outside of my son being born, something like that, that's a highlight, to be able to use these skills that you've developed over a career, and to be able to use them to make another, service member on the ground who's going through a tough time, make their day a little bit better, get them home back to their fob, was extremely meaningful.
Yeah. I have to give a shout out to one of our co-hosts, Eric. He is arguably one of the best controllers that I have ever met. And on top of that, he was a detachment guy. So he's an SF guy that is cross-trained and then has to do the job of a JTAC on the ground. And I guarantee during that year, you probably had a few, or some of your counterparts have dealt with Eric. And I mean, just the connection between the controller on the ground and the pilots to make that precision drop is just insane. Seeing it from our perspective on the ground, our JTACs, CCTs, or controllers on the team get the least amount of rest. They get the most stressful positions on the team, and they have to quiet the chaos and be able to talk just like this to communicate clearly with you in the air in order to make that mission effective. And it always blows my mind to think back when I seen him or Ryan, another one of our co-hosts, or any of our past friends of our CCTs or JTACs, making those decisions, calling those shots. And it's just like, it's controlling chaos while you're on fire.
Yeah, it's incredible. Incredible work by them. And they'd be calling in airstrikes nonstop. They wouldn't be sleeping, just taking go pills. And I remember after one of them, one firefight, as we were leaving, I was like, "Hey, what do you guys need? We'll get something sent to you guys." And they're just like, "Rippets and dip." I'm like, "All right, you got it." So we got some helicopters to bring in some rippets and dip. So those guys are awesome. And the ability to control that air power gives them a huge advantage. They're they're harnessing this extreme power to be able to help the Rangers or the teams that they're working with. So they're probably the most important person on the team.
100%.
So it was great to be able to work with them. Nothing but great things to say about, because my specialty was seed suppression of enemy air defense. So I was a Block 50 F-16 guy before flying the F-35. And so what we focused on was, like Top Gun, everybody's seen that, the Canyon Run, all the missile sites on the rim of that was my specialty, taking those things out. So when we heard we were going to Afghanistan, that was a big spin up, because we were only doing about 1 or 2 CAS sorties a year prior to that, because there were only 6 seed squadrons in the world. So we were really focused on that. But it was incredible to be able to learn the close air support mission, to be able to, over the course of deployment, become an expert in it, and to be able to help the troops on the ground, especially when they're in rough times, was definitely amazing.
No. How difficult is it now? I mean, you're still serving, still part of the Air Force and the Reserve, correct?
Correct. Part-time.
How does it feel to be the mentor now, to be the graybeard, no longer the young aviator that's going to be? Now you're the one that's mentoring the next generation of fighter pilot. How did that transition feel? How do they go for you?
I love it. I mean, that's kind of the progression for fighter pilots. You start off as a wingman, where you're pretty much worthless. You're just following around your flight lead. I mean, you go through all this training, you go through years of training, you're the top of your class. And as soon as you show up to your first fighter squadron, the most important job you have is being in charge of the snack bar. You're the snacko. So make sure that they have energy drinks and good snacks. Nobody cares about your opinion. And you can't even go into combat. So it takes a couple months, 3 months to go through your mission qualification training. And then you become a wingman, where you just follow the flight lead around. A few years later, a flight lead in charge of 4 other aircraft. And then you become an instructor pilot, where you're teaching the next generation. You're also in charge of a bunch of aircraft when you're flying. So it's the natural progression for fighter pilots. And I love it. I love, teaching and trying to bestow some of this wisdom on new pilots. They're in their early 20s. They're great pilots, but they, the biggest problem they have is inconsistent decision making. So they will they'll do a better job than me in some tactics and maneuvers, but then every once in a while they make a disastrous, terrible decision. So I think as you get better and more experienced, the difference between, a poor decision really starts to improve. So that's my job, is trying to cut out those, if you look at the graph, it's good decision, terrible decision, good decision, good decision, good decision, or a lot of mental stuff too, where they will end up choking and they'll start dwelling and thinking about a mistake they made. And then the train comes off the track. So being able to teach them to be more resilient and to stay focused, stay in the present moment, as well as all the tactics. So it's a fun challenge, because you're getting a new student each day, and you can't have the same scripted routine with each of them. They come to you, they have different beliefs, different understandings, different ways of learning. And so you have to adapt your style to them, not the other way around, to make them a little bit better. You're not going to make them, if they're an average student, you're not going to make them great overnight. And if they're a great student, you're going to instruct them differently. So I like the challenge of being able to take somebody new, not quite understand exactly how they learn, and then to be able to adapt my style to make them more lethal and better. And it's been fun, especially with the F-35, because we had a chance to completely revamp pilot training. And we were having people from the A-10, the F-16, the F-22. And so we had kind of a once in a career opportunity to completely change pilot training and make fifth-gen wingmen that can survive and thrive in the late 20s, mid-30s.
Yeah, gosh, I can't even fathom what it's like to get into the seat of that aircraft. It just seems so sci-fi. In my mind, it looks like the cockpit of an X-Wing fighter pilot. Like I cannot, like, it does not seem like we're living in reality when we see what has been put out there, what's acceptable to put out there. It just seems so advanced, so much computer power. And you have to try to teach that to a young 20-something individual. Like, I don't even know where to begin. Like,
it is really different. I mean, air combat's really changed. So the F-16 had hundreds of buttons. The F-35 has about 30 buttons. It has 2 large touchscreen displays, like almost 2 giant iPads in front of you. It doesn't have a heads-up display. Everything is pumped into your helmet, and it's true augmented reality. So when you're looking out the sides, you see shapes following all the good guys with all the information you need to be a team together. You see diamonds over all the bad guys, all the information you need to take them out. And then we have mid-wave IR cameras that can see in pitch black, and it stitches that world together. So at night you can look through your body. So it's pretty amazing. And it took me about a year to fully transition because, you know, the speeds were flying mile every 3 seconds of closure. So I was thinking in F-16 and then translating to F-35, and that was just too slow. So it took me about a year to start thinking in F-35 because I'd already flown the F-16 for 6 years beforehand. But it's amazing the situational awareness you have, your stealth. It's almost like playing football or something like that, and you're invisible. So you have a massive advantage over the enemy. And I know the F-35 gets a lot of hate, but I think people should separate the program from the jet itself. So the program, a lot of issues, delayed, expensive, but the actual jet itself is pretty amazing. And I think most people, anybody that's flown with a F-35 in the last couple of years, I think will say that it's pretty special, pretty amazing. You still have some of the old timers, you know, who flew in the 70s that really haven't seen, again, they were experts, but they haven't seen all the classified information and haven't been to red flags and things like that. So they tend to bash it quite a bit, but I have not heard one single pilot who's flown, you know, with these large force exercises in these last couple of years, badmouth the plane. So, you know, it is the future. It's going to be the backbone of air power for the next 50 years. And I'm sure you have some thoughts on it being on the close air support side. You know, we are not an A-10 out there. You know, there are some gaps, but you know, for what it does, it's pretty good.
And here's my input as somebody on the ground. I don't care what you fly in to suppress the enemy. If it's gotten to the point where I need close air support, I'm not like, hey, you're not sending over just a crop duster. I don't care. Bring what you got, what assets you got to bear, and I'm going to be happy. That's the reality of it. I mean, we tend to romanticize certain airframes because of what we've seen in Hollywood or the experience we had during one fighting season or one particular engagement. And yeah, it's that moment at that particular time and space. It was amazing to have that aircraft come in and do X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, I don't care what you got. When we're calling in for support, when we're calling in to suppress the enemy, I'm going to take whatever you can get, whatever you can give me, as long as it's not, you know, a worthless aircraft that can't do the mission. I'm going to be happy. Like, at the end of the day, we have a lot of firepower we bring on a team, on a detachment, whether you're Green Beret, ODA, or Rangers, or conventional unit. You have certain capacity of weapon systems that you bring to the battlefield. When you need something more, whatever you can get on station, I'm going to utilize it. I'm going to utilize it and maximize its capabilities. I want to be happy with it. Times change. We have to adapt. Yeah. A-10 is cool. It's awesome. We're going to always look back at our time and love hearing that gun go. But at the end of the day, like, hey, if I call for something and you come back and say, hey, all we got's a F-35. I'm not going to say, oh no, an F-35. I've been on ground when all we can do, because of, administrations that were in office, all we could do were shows of force. That sucks. I don't want to show force. I don't want somebody to fly low. I want ordnance. And if the F-35 is what we got, then that's what we got. And I'm not going to question it. I'm not. We seem to forget when Donald Rumsfeld gave us the biggest FU speech going into Iraq. You don't go to war with the military you want. You go to the war with the military you got, or the army and that's just it. I mean, you can't wish and pray for different types of accommodations. No, like whatever aircraft we've got, it's going to do the job. Just don't ever send me into the battlefield on an Osprey. That's the only thing. That's the only aircraft I've ever been in that I've said, you know what? Maybe it just needs a little bit more time in, the R&D department. Like, it's just not the greatest. Definitely ahead of its time.
I don't know if you saw, the Army is going with a tilt rotor variant. So,
yeah.
It takes a while for technology to mature, just like the F-35. But it is, I would say, one of the stories I talk about in the book is the opening days of the Gulf War. The first strike wasn't some sort of stealth fighter. It was helicopters. So it was helicopters and Apaches going across the border. So I talked to, instead of thinking about really what the assets you have, you should think about the effects that you need. Break everything down. Yes. And I think that applies to anybody. If you're a doctor, lawyer, teacher, even if you're buying a car, you shouldn't say, I need a car. You should say, what's the ultimate effect I need? I need to get from A to B. And there's a lot of different solutions, especially now, Ubers, all kinds of different things. And it might drive you to a car, but at least that gives you the opportunity to find a creative solution. Just like these guys in Task Force Normandy did. They paired Pavehawk or Pavlos with Apaches, and they were able to take out some early warning radar sites that other people wouldn't have been able to do. So I think there's a lot of unique things. If you can break it down to just the effects needed, that's how you can get more creative as an individual and as an organization.
Absolutely. And to finish it off, to take us out on a more entrepreneurial note, when you made that commitment, when you made the decision, okay, I'm going to transition. I want to fly part-time and I'm going to pursue something else. How did you make that decision to go into the entrepreneurial route? Because everybody, and I think you said it earlier, everybody wants to push us towards a corporate job or direct us towards, oh, you should do this work with AWS. You should work here. You would be great here at this company. But they're looking at us as something to sell. They're not, a lot of organizations that help with job placement, they're looking to sell us as a commodity. Hey, I got a SOF service member, or I got a fighter pilot. He'd be great in sales. I don't ever want to do sales. Mm-hmm. I never found myself wanting to do a lot of these jobs, but there's a lot of support and a lot of interesting individuals that will make it seem very lucrative to just follow the formula. How did you go against that?
Yeah, two things. First, you got to burn the golden handcuffs. Like, you got to burn the ships. You got to do something that you're going to enjoy, because it's very easy to walk into the corporate world and get a decent job. So I think if you have that mentality and that mindset, a lot of people, for instance, a lot of fighter pilots go into the airlines. They're like, it's a pretty easy job. Benefits are great. I'll have a lot of time to do whatever my passion is. And, for most of them, that never comes, because it starts slowly sucking up more time. After a couple of years, all those skills and training that they had atrophy. And so they're not able to really pursue whatever that passion is. So you have to climb down the mountain, because for us, I'm sure you guys, you're at the pinnacle at the end of your career of being an expert in your weapon system. I know, at least for fighter pilots, we go and do staff jobs and things like that, but you're at least an expert in flying the F-35, and you're not going to be that on the outside no matter where you go. So you have to be willing to climb down the mountain and to endure the crap again, and to be the new person, and to not have it, well thought out, to have people critiquing your work, whether you're in the public space, social media, you get plenty of feedback. Same thing with YouTube videos, writing. You have to be willing to endure that feedback and try to get better. So I think it's a difficult mindset for people that have become experts to now become non-experts and have people view them as less, in an ivory tower. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I would say that, as a military member, especially if you've done something kind of cool, you get a lot of people that reach out to you, but it's almost a double-edged type of a situation where they love hearing your stories. They love thanking you for your service, but they aren't really willing to invest in you in terms of getting a really good job, or if you're an entrepreneur, funding whatever your business is. And in a lot of respects, I understand that, because you haven't proven yourself as an entrepreneur, but it is challenging to navigate, to realize that a lot of these people will smile, pat you on the back. They want you around them. They want to tell their friends about you, but they don't want to support you where it really matters. So you have to prove on your own that you can hang with whatever job you're in. And then I think that's when you start getting the investment. So just don't be surprised that a lot of people are going to have smiling faces, but aren't going to be really willing to back you when it really matters. But, it probably makes sense. It definitely makes sense on their part to not, invest their hard-earned money in somebody that hasn't proven that they can start a business, but just don't be surprised by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hasard, I want to thank you so much for being here today. The book comes out on the 23rd?
23rd, correct.
23rd. And the title of that book is The Art of Clear Thinking, a Stealth Fighter Pilot's Timeless Rules for Making Tough Decisions. What are your social media handles? And your website is www.hasard.
So everything's under at Hasard Lee with an S. So HASARD, Lee, Lee. And same thing with the website, hasardlee.com. You can find the book anywhere where books are sold. It's a priority book by Barnes & Noble and Meta. It's been selected as a must-read by the Next Big Idea Club with Malcolm Gladwell. So it's been good reviews so far. And I'd love to, I flew with some book plates. I flew supersonic with them. I signed them. They go in the book. So I'd love to send you some so that you can send to your audience. Anybody that pre-orders or whoever pre-orders the book, I'll send you a few of those that you can give out, or you can just, buy plenty of books yourself and then put them in there. So I'd be happy to send you those for your audience. But look for it next week, The Art of Clear Thinking, and I hope you enjoy it.
Heck yeah, brother. I really appreciate it. And lastly, so we can make sure this gets pumped up through the algorithm, how many aliens have you encountered flying the F-35?
Well, I don't know if they were aliens, but UAPs seem to be the new popular thing. So I've seen plenty of UAPs. I don't think they were aliens, but, I'm sure they were paying with Bitcoin. So there you go.
Perfect. And the FBI just entered the chat. So we're going to have to end it there. Until next time, take care.